Let's unpack Karl Weick's concept of partial inclusion. As usual, he builds on systems theory, where organizations are systems. They have permeable boundaries. They are open to their environment, and people or actors in the organization belong to multiple systems at the same time. For that reason, he articulated and pushed forward this notion of partial inclusion, where employees are only partially included in their organizational system, their workplace. A person does not invest all behavior in a single group. Therefore, Weick says, commitments and interlockings are dispersed among several groups. We're pulled in different directions. So whole persons aren't contained in the boxes on organizational charts. But managers forget that, which is why organizational charts are never the way things work. For example, in your workplace, you may be part of an organization and see your little department on a chart and has certain lines going to certain people that you're supposed to talk to, but it almost never works that way because we're all pulled in different directions and have different levels of inclusion. For example, you may have 3 different employees in a workplace, and they all work pretty hard, but a couple of them are also involved in the local church. They might be part of the choir and have to schedule those things. And one of those employees might also coach a traveling soccer team and takes him or her on the road, and there's a schedule there to maintain during the season. They're going to have different levels of inclusion and motivation. And you might have a 4th person who doesn't do coaching or go to church, but is an active volunteer. So there's no one way a manager can motivate all 4 of these employees at the same time. He or she is going to have to take different approaches depending upon the level of inclusion of the employees. So partial inclusion is connected to motivation. Managers' motivational strategies are often ineffective. Employees belong to multiple systems and have diverse motivations, and we have to keep that in mind. Membership in multiple systems influences and limits employees' commitment to any one specific system. So if you're really involved in lots of different organizations, then you might come in late for some reason or call in sick. You might be willing or less willing to travel on trips for the organization. Your desire to get promoted and get raises may be different depending upon who you're talking to. Your beliefs, your values are all shaped by the different organizations that you are a part of. So it's really important that managers recognize that partial inclusion directly affects people's motivation. For example, employee A cannot be motivated the way the rest of employees are motivated. This employee is 60 years old, a homeowner, married, grandkids, active volunteer on a sailing team, and has lots of money in retirement. You cannot approach employee A the same way you approach employee B if you're a manager. If this person's 25, rents an apartment, is single, no kids, is part of competitive martial arts, which, by the way, is typically an individual sport as opposed to a sailing team, and the person has very little money in the bank, they're going to be motivated very differently, and their levels of commitment to the organization are going to be different than employee A. So 2 different people, same manager. How does this manager approach and motivate people with different levels of commitment and inclusion? So there are obviously important implications for managers that this concept helps us see. Employees' motivations and behaviors are all shaped by their degree of inclusion. There is no one best way to motivate all employees. In the old classical management era, in factories, you could threaten people to get fired, or you can bribe them with a little more money. But according to Karl Weick and partial inclusion, this is not really going to work for everybody. You have to come up with different ways to reach your people. So you must keep employees' partial inclusion in mind when leading. This is a really important concept. It's pretty straightforward, but it helps explain a lot about the way people are motivated in their organizations. They have different levels of inclusion. Some are partially included, but work quite hard, and others are partially included to a lesser degree because they are pulled in different directions by the different organizations they are involved in.